TV opening. You want me to help you? You said it. Could be my phone, could be my. Oh, last time I've done it. That's like the yard, right? Call the yard.
Jessica, what is this noise out here? You know anything? Okay. Thank you.
Shut this off.
And you can set it up against this. There you go. There you go.
Love that dress. Blue jean. Color.
Work is stressing me out. When I can go therapy. When I can go therapy. When I can go therapy 3 times a day. Come around, oh boys. I'm spending the rest of my days on. Too. I can go therapy. I can go therapy. And I can go therapy 2 times a day. Yes, you are live right here. You are live right here. KABF 88.3 FM. KABF 88.3 FM, where we are the voice of the people. You're coming in live for the Health Corner. you know, when Denise is here, Mary J brings us in with therapy. Why do I have to spend all my days being bitter when I can go to therapy and I can turn things around? And so we're going to be talking about all things related to brain health, emotional health, psychological health, spiritual health, all of those things that help us to be our very best selves. And we got Pastor Key in the house, holding it down for everybody. We will be hearing from her shortly. I do want to take a moment to pause and say how grateful we are for your presence in this space. KABF 88.3 FM is celebrating 40 years being on the air, one of only 12 community radio stations with 100,000 watts. And now, thanks to the internet, we are a global streaming platform. So people are listening to us from all over the world. And we know because they call and tell us. It's not what we think. It's not what we suppose. It's what we know because people share about how they feel about the shows that are coming across this station to educate, to inform, to enlighten, to engage. So we are glad that you stopped right here for this next hour, 9 to 10, to talk about the Health Corner. I do have a few announcements that I need to make as we begin to get into the show on today. First of all, I want to make sure that you know that there is a community talent show happening at Dunbar Magnet Middle School on 1100 Wright Avenue, right here in the city of Little Rock. 72206 is the zip code. Is happening on May 24th, 2024 at 6 p.m. This is when you can come in and audition, and the actual performance is happening at Juneteenth in the Rock on June 15th. So we want you to audition on May 24th in preparation for the performance, which is on June 15th. We want you to share your talent with the world. Children and adult performances will be judged separately. First place, $500. Second place, $300. Third place, $150. Come on, y'all. Let the world see the gifts and the talents that you have. We also want you to know that Period Poverty Awareness Week happens May 20th through 28th this year. May 20th through 28th, 2024. And Katie has put out, or the Period Project has put out a bingo card. And the bingo card is not asking you to play bingo. It's not asking you to gamble. It's not asking you to do anything like that, but just to think about it. Like, what have you done to address period poverty awareness? Have you donated? Have you talked about period poverty? Have you donated period products? Have you hosted a packing party? Have you started a donation drive? Have you volunteered? Have you donated $20? Have you shared period poverty statistics? Have you shared the mission of Arkansas Period Poverty Project? Have you read Period Power by Nadia Okamoto? Have you talked to your school about period products that are needed? Have you collected signatures for the petition to end the pink tax? What have you done? And so that's what we're asking you to think about as we get ready to celebrate Period Poverty Awareness Week happening May 20th through 28th. Also want to make sure that you are aware that the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff will host the inaugural, that means the first time, Juneteenth in the Bluff Arts and Culture Festival to celebrate the Juneteenth holiday. The festival is sponsored by the Pine Bluff Advertising and Promotion Commission, and it is free and open to the public. To kick off the Juneteenth weekend, the evening-long festival will feature Blues Hall of Famer Lattimore, along with Fuzzy Jeffries and the Kings of Memphis and other local musicians. There will be a farmer's market and food tastings by the ACF, Arkansas Delta Chefs Association. There will be art activities for youth and art exhibits by the UAPB Art Department. There will be vendor booths and giveaways. Food trucks will also be present, offering food and beverages for purchase. So Juneteenth happening for the first time on June 14th from 3 to 10 p.m. in Pine Bluff. I also want you to know that today, this is happening. Oh, wow. It's happening today, and we already missed the time. It's happening at 9 o'clock. Some of y'all might want to jump over to this. The Arkansas Board of Correction is meeting today, 5/16, at 9 a.m. in Malvern, and there's a live stream. So you can just Google it on your computer, the Arkansas Board of Corrections. This particular prison, which is located in Fayetteville has the lowest recidivism of all of the prisons in the state, and it offers treatment, and it works on family reunification. And yet there are people who are coming against it and trying to thwart the efforts that they are doing to help the people who are incarcerated. So if you want to join that conversation, you need to jump over there right now. The Arkansas Board of Corrections talking about the prison that's in Fayetteville. Also on today at 1:30 p.m., the new Dr. Marion G. Lacey K-8 school features 84 classrooms, a cafeteria, a competition gym, a dance studio, cutting-edge facilities, and interactive learning spaces. The school is the only LRSD campus with a fully FEMA-certified built-in tornado shelter. We cannot wait to open the doors. So the grand opening and the ribbon cutting is today at 1:30 p.m., 9417 Geyer Springs Road, right here in Little Rock. Whew. I think that's enough. I got some more, but I think I had time to announce these. No. I got to announce this one right here. From Keith Harper. Yes, let me announce this one from Keith Harper. Sparking Dialogue Through Drama presents socially themed theater experiences for teen audiences. Through performing arts and dialogue, artists and audiences explore meaningful stories about history, identity, and culture within local, national, and international contexts. In this edition of Sparking Dialogue, the Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts presents Breaking the Box, a live performance that combines documentary theater with fiction, video footage, and music to examine race, education, and the school-to-prison pipeline in America. Breaking the Box dives into this complex topic, offering a unique forum to engage in topics through the lens of performing arts. The post-show discussion with the creators allows the audience to dialogue with the artists on the themes presented. And you can call in and get a free ticket to this show that's happening tonight at 6:30 p.m. Just call in and say, hey, I want to go to the show, and give us your name, and we'll make sure that ticket is waiting for you, and it is free of charge. Breaking the Box, that happens tonight, 6:30 p.m. at the Arkansas Museum of Fine Arts. Those are your announcements for today. Let us govern ourselves accordingly. Pastor Key, let us know you're here.
In the house. Oh, good morning. I am so blessed.
Let's see. I want to make sure that people are hearing you. Say it again.
Good morning. Good morning.
Okay.
Good morning.
That's me. Yeah, so you holding it down.
I'm holding it down to the health corner. And they on the road and doing this and that.
They on the road doing this and that. But here you are in the place. I think that's a mark of community when we think about the importance of having community, is because all of us are bringing different gifts, and we need everybody at the table. And even when a person is not able to be at the table, it's okay, because we have enough gifts at the table to keep us moving. Mm-hmm. But that only happens when we are networking, when we are in community, when we create a tribe. That's the only time that can happen. So that's a testament to y'all working together.
People.
Yeah. I've been thinking a lot. Oh wait, let me ask you. Did you have a topic that you want to talk about today?
Well, I'm always focusing, or it seems that's where my heart is in this season, for mental health, and this is Mental Health Awareness Month, and so I'm always focusing on that because there's so much of it in our community, so much of it in our Black community, in all communities, but 90% of African Americans are suffering with some type of mental health issue, not mental illness, mental health changes. And because a lot of people don't realize that mental health, there's a stigma attached to it, but mental health involves many areas of our life that we deal with on a daily basis, if no more than grief, loss.
So maybe people need to hear from you, what is the difference between mental health and mental illness? Because I think some of us, we conflate it, like it's all the same thing.
Well, I think mental illness is an old terminology, because mental illness, the process of mind health had a stigma attached to it, and it was thought of as a disease or as a illness or sickness. But I think more now the term mental health is focusing on wellness, on developing attitude toward our mental health that is more positive. Because we all have different seasons in our life, different times in our life when mental health can become, just as our physical health changes. We're not sick, but we may have some challenges in our life, stresses in our life that are more prevalent at a particular season in our life. So illness versus health. And I think we need to look at mind wellness or mental health more so than it being a sickness. I'm sick. Because when you already, there's a stigma attached to it, it causes people not to want to talk about it because no who wants to talk about their sickness or wants to pull out, so to speak, their dirty language, their dirty laundry. So, but wellness, how well are you? Sometimes we need to ask that question, how well am I? There's a thin line sometimes on how well we are from day to day. Sometimes we get up this one, sometimes the commercial says, sometimes I feel like a nut and sometimes I don't. It's not an illness, but sometimes it's where you are and what you're dealing with that day, the stresses that you're dealing with, and the season in your life. Because mental health could be related to hormonal changes. It can be related to aging challenges, how we feel about how we're facing challenges, just many things. So we all have to admit that we have some challenges with mental health.
So it's important for us, this is what I hear you saying, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. It's important for us to understand that when a person says, I want to check on you and I want to ask about and inquire about your mental health, I'm not trying to diagnose you with a disease.
That's right.
I'm not trying to say you bipolar or schizophrenic or that you have anxiety or depression. What I'm doing is checking in on you to see how you are coping with just the everyday stresses of life.
Yes.
If you are Black,
Yes.
you have even more stressors than other people because of the way the world responds to us, because we are so melanated. And so we're not trying to figure out, do you need a diagnosis? Do you need some medication? We're just checking in on you, mind, body, spirit, and soul.
Yes, yes. Because we are we're multi-leveled. We're more than just our aches and pains, our physical health. We're also our mind wellness, our mental health. And that's a component that sometimes we ignore, and it comes back and bites us because we're not dealing with the mental health of our community, of our family, even of ourselves. We're just dealing with the physical. We're dealing with financial. We're dealing with so many forces that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. But mental health is one that we all have to deal with at one point or another.
I think, especially when you said that you are really concerned about mental health for all people, and especially for people who are Black, and I'm using the word Black in the most expansive definition of the word, all members of the African diaspora. I really believe that one of the reasons that we are unable to focus on our mental health is because we have been taught and we have always been in survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
We've not really been able to relax into what it means to thrive.
Yes.
I'm so busy just trying to get through the day. I'm trying to exist. I'm trying to do, and so it's difficult, I think, for some people to say, oh wait, let me stop for a moment and ask myself, how is my brain health? Like it seems like we don't have
how's my emotional health?
Because I have been conditioned, let me just speak for myself. I have been conditioned to believe that those things don't matter. There's something that has to be done.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be done today. You are the one that has to do it. And again, I'm talking for myself. And we even put it on God. God has called you to this purpose for you to get this work done. We don't have time to ask any questions about how am I feeling. Do it. So just put your head down, hold your head up, however the people look at it, and get it done. And that's a lot of how we spend our time.
And that's in the physical. We spend our time laboring in the physical, but we don't spend a lot of time laboring in dealing with the emotional. We almost feel like it's a weakness to admit that I have emotions, that I have feelings about situations. And I give, for an example, a common denominator for many people, all people of all color. Like I said before, grief. If you have not experienced grief or loss, and that's loss of a loved one, family member, community leader, even teacher, even our children have experienced losing their teacher. That's not a family member. Their first loss commonly is someone related to their day-to-day life is a teacher. And sometimes, or many times, we don't learn how to deal with it as a child because sometimes people hide it from children and don't acknowledge that they have the ability or even the mechanism within them to deal with grief, and so they don't deal with it. But one thing about grief, it comes back and bites you, because if you don't deal with the process, there's a process, there's stages of grief. If you don't deal with it, you get stuck in one of them. You either get stuck at being angry, you get stuck in denial, you know, bitterness, and so you can get stuck in any of those stages of grief. But if you don't even want to acknowledge it and you don't get any help to deal with it, you're going to continue to grieve when you could have processed through it.
Yeah, and I think that it's, for me, important that we broaden the definition of grief, because we talk about it as it relates to a person that we've lost, a person who has died. My mother doesn't like that word died. Some people don't. You want to say passed on. Some people say transition. Some people say we're murdered. Some people say we're killed. Whatever that word is, it says
But
this person
is in our community.
Yes. But I think that it is important for us to also recognize that if you are in a relationship that you were committed to, and you, the two of you decide that you are, or however many is in the relationship, you decide that you're going to part ways, there's grief attached to the loss of that relationship. If people are married and they get divorced, there is grief attached to divorce. If you have been working on a job that you love and you thought you were going to be there until you retired and you got laid off or you were fired or whatever happened, or you got into an accident that won't allow you to work in the ways that you used to, there's grief associated with that. So grief we can find ourselves grieving over any number of things. And so when we don't take the time to say, wait a minute, let me stop and acknowledge that I'm sad right now. Like this really hurts me. Right? That this happened. I didn't expect it. I didn't want it. I know I have to deal with it, but I need to stay here right now. And a lot of times, especially for me as a person who grew up in the church, a lot of times even the church doesn't make room for that, because it's like, okay, no. You ain't supposed to be sad. You know,
they're going to heaven. They're in heaven. So you can't grieve.
And so we have to, I agree with you, we have to do a better job of saying, hey, we have emotions for a reason.
We have to do a better job because it is such a common denominator. Everyone will lose someone, or someone will transition in your life. Life stresses will come. Jobs will change. The percentage of marriages that make it to 50, 60 years is very, very low. So that's a great loss when parents separate and young people, children experience that loss. A divided home is one of the greatest losses, you know, because it changes their stability and it changes their level of safety, how they feel about, am I going to be okay? Dad is gone, mom is gone. So there's a type of grief that goes with that. But when we won't even acknowledge it, then no one can deal with it. Well, you know, everybody gets a divorce. Nobody stays married. We kind of get blasé about losses and we don't deal with it. And so the child can't deal with it. I really feel some kind of way about this divorce. I really feel some kind of way about this situation. Not matter who's right or wrong, I lost something. I lost my stable home, my mother and my father. But also losses like teachers leaving from our lives, schools closing, consolidating, changing your community and their alignment. You know, we go through that with the school districts many times. You have a neighborhood school that everybody went to. My sister, my brother, everyone else went to this school. But now this school's closing, and I'm not going to get to continue that legacy. And so there's a loss there. And the community has a right to grieve and acknowledge that. And a lot of times, because we are angry, it's because we didn't grieve that loss. Sometimes we're continually angry with the system because, you know, we used to have whatever, I'm just going to give a name, and there are some probably by that name, but Baker Elementary used to be right here. That was my school, and those are my teachers, my principals. Now my teacher that was at Baker is over here, and so I lost that person that was impactful in my life. And even churches, breakdowns of churches, splitting of churches, that community, that safety net is not there anymore. Pastors leave. There are many losses. Right. Many types of grief.
Yeah, I think about gentrification. While you were talking, I was thinking about gentrification, because that's what's happening in the area where I live. And so I've only lived there, I think, about 5 or 6 years now. And to see the changes, there's one on 17th, there's this one area where they are right now building 2 homes. But there used to be another home, like a single home there. And I stopped one day and I had to think, Like, what happened to the people who were living in that house before y'all? They just raised it and then started building these 2 other houses. Like, what happened to that family? Were they displaced? Did they die? Like, what happens? And when we don't allow for, when we don't make space for grief, we don't allow for the stories to be told. And if you're not telling me the story, I can't carry that story, and I can't continue that story. It's lost. All of it. I even grieve sometimes when I go to Edwards right here on Main Street, because I remember when I used to go in there used to be this dollar aisle. When we first walked in, there was this dollar. The whole aisle was just $1. There were certain products that I could get, certain foods that I could get that my mama wants, who's 87, and they are not there anymore. And so that part of our culinary history is now lost because you decided that you wanted to make a change and you didn't invite anybody into the conversation, and you didn't give us time to grieve. You just changed it and nobody's talking about it. And even my mama's body, like my mom is 87 and she doesn't know it, but I can see it clearly that she's grieving the aging process. Her body no longer functions the way it used to, and that makes her feel some kind of way. You know. So there's so many.
I used to be able to mix my bread up, and now I can't turn my wrist. Now I can't move. I used to be able to reach up in that top cabinet and get that nice bowl that I always use for this, but now I have to call somebody to get that for me. It changes how grief over it also changes how you respond to people. Sometimes people are a little short with their grandchildren and their people who are helping them, because really I'm grieving the fact that I can't do it anymore and I have to allow someone else to do it. So it changes dynamics and conversations between people when you don't acknowledge that you're grieving, you lost something. You just keep pretending. We all have to come to a point where we say, I really can't do that anymore. And that's called coming to, in the process of grieving. We can't be in denial that, I can still run down to the corner. No, baby, I'm going to have to walk down to the corner if I get down there at all. Someone's going to have to give me a ride to the corner, and be okay with asking for help. And that's where the role of the church comes in, I think, with mental health. And it's not been a good dynamic with the church and mental health, because many times we have been taught in our community, the Black community, that the role of the church is, or faith is the answer to everything. If you have a little more faith. And sometimes when someone is realizing that they're having difficulty processing through the stresses of life, and that they feel overwhelmed, and they may talk to their dear pastor or someone in a pastoral role, to their mentor, and the answer is, we're going to pray. And it's going to be all right. Well, it's good to speak by faith that it's going to be all right. Faith is always good. We need our faith. I'm not disparaging faith, but there are some resources that pastors need to know. The Black community needs to know about it. And a lot of our information, communication through the Black community comes through churches, because that's one place we have a common denominator. On Sunday morning, we're going to go to our church, because that's been our source of strength through a lot of adversity, through the slavery times, through the civil rights times. The church was a center of communication for change and for encouragement, and you're going to make it, and are standing together against something. So the church has already a role in the community. But in mental health, I think we have failed to be the catalyst that we need to be, to get people where they need to be. I think we've risen in a lot of areas, civil rights, community health programs, and those kind of things, but not mental health.
Right. I do want to make sure that I say that the phone line, I don't think I said this earlier, the phone lines are open at 501-433-0088, 501-433-0088. You can call in and lend your voice to this conversation, because after all, you are listening to KABF 88.3 FM, where we are the voice of the people. And I agree that the church has not done a good job. And I feel like, usually when somebody is murdered, is killed by the police, there will be an uproar in the Black community to say, hey, we want you to pay attention because our lives matter. And then the response is usually from the law enforcement the law enforcement department, we're going to train people differently. We're going to get them some more resources. We're going to try to figure out a different way of doing this. Now you've got communities talking about there needs to be a social worker on the team because these people are not trained to really handle some of the issues when they go on a call. And because we have that attitude when it comes to people dying at the hands of law enforcement, I feel like it shouldn't be very difficult for us to translate that into the mental health unit to say, hey, if you got people dying from mental health issues in your church, then you ought to say, hold on, we need to bring somebody else in here. We need to do something differently. We need some more training. We need some more education. We need some more information. And I'm afraid,
many times we don't want someone else to address that issue because we want to be the answer to everything.
The pastor, yes.
The pastor cannot be. I'm a pastor. I've been for 20 years. You cannot be the answer to everything. You are not the answer to everything.
You don't have all the information. You don't have all the training.
God is the answer, but he utilizes many different tools. And there are many resources out here that I believe God has gifted people in that area, professionals who have skills. And I think all good gifts come from God. So it still goes back to God. But many times we direct people to us. Well, I'm going to talk to you on Wednesday night. We're going to have a little counseling session. And you have no resources. You're not able to direct them to the professional people in that area that would help. You know, I'm a retired nurse, and I have no way that an OBGYN is going to have an appointment meeting with someone concerning their spinal health, their back pain.
Yeah, because the mental health.
Because they know that's not their area.
The healthcare area will say to you, hey, you need to go to a specialist.
You need to go to a specialist.
You need to go to someone. And so
but an OBGYN, if they're their primary, and many women, their primary doctor is an OBGYN, or a GYN doctor is their primary care doctor. But even though he's a GYN and he's a OB, he's going to make referral to specialists for skin cancer.
Because he's going to recognize their area of expertise.
They're not going to walk up. They're going to stay in their lane. Absolutely. Because they realize they have someone who can deal with this issue. They don't drop the patient. The patient is still theirs. And so, you know, I encourage pastors to realize you're not turning this person away. You're not sending them away. You're not severing your relationship with them, but you're referring them to someone who can deal with the issue that they're facing. Yeah, acknowledge it's in your congregation already. I heard you say a few minutes ago, if you have people who are suffering with mental health issues in your congregation, you have congregants who are dealing with that. Absolutely. And they're not dealing with it well. And you're trying to address it because it's going to come up, but you don't have the tools that you need to address it. So it's not being addressed appropriately, and it's ballooning, and it's worsening. And many times the first contact that our people in our community have with the professionals that they need is when they're in crisis.
Yeah, and
that first time.
Yeah, so because the church is not doing a good job of addressing this, what's actually happening is that the church is causing more injury. The church is traumatizing and harming the person. And then that means, so for many of us, we have now said, you know what, the church is not where I need to go and get whatever I need. And so we talk about community and what it means to be in community with folks. People who know me and are in my inner circle, they know that one question I ask on a regular basis is, how is it with your soul? And a lot of times people are stumped when I ask the question. They pause for several minutes. Some of them even have to say, I'm going to have to get back to you on that, because no one has ever asked them, and they have not stopped to say, wait a minute, let me. And so it's important for us to reach beyond the church, especially when we know that the church is still struggling with its own issues of understanding that the pastor does not have all of the answers. And if that pastor is not ready to be as resourceful as he, she, or they need to be, we've got to have the help somewhere.
And it's not even a slant, or as the kids say, I'm not throwing shade on the pastors. I'm a pastor. But we do need to acknowledge what we can do and what we should do and what we're not doing.
Well, you can't fix it.
We can't pretend that we got to name it first. Yeah. We can't pretend that mental health issues are not prevalent in our church, and sometimes even in ourselves. When we can be transparent as pastors, as men and women of God, or leaders, that we've got some issues in some areas. Because sometimes pastors won't even admit that they're grieving. Oh no, I'm not grieved. I have had the Holy Spirit on the inside, so I don't grieve.
Yeah,
We are human. That's a false statement that we're in denial with even ourselves, and so we don't deal with it. So when you don't deal with something, then it's hard for you to help your congregate to deal with it because you haven't dealt with it.
And it's hard for us to help the world. And so for me, I know it is important. I think every person should decide for themselves. I'm going to take control of my own brain health, my own mental health. So there are times when I have been angry. There are times when I have been sad. And I've been in conversation with a person who wants to gloss over that. Oh, it's don't worry about that. Look for the silver lining. They'll say something like that. And I will say to them, no. I am really going to sit right here with my emotions. They deserve my attention. They are data. My emotions are data. They inform me. I need to engage in conversation with this anger. I need to engage this sadness and ask you, what is it that you're trying to tell me? What is it that you're trying to show me? And so I refuse to allow a person to push me out of my emotions because we're trying to get to the happier moment. Like we're trying so hard to be comfortable and happy, and that's just not how life works.
And I think that a lot of times in the past, how we deal with things in the past is how we'll deal with things today. And we don't ever change that. We'll continue to do the same cycle. Sometimes we want to be that old, I call it tap. We want to do that little tap dance. We want to be smiling and scatting and I'm happy, and we want to be the happy black person, the happy Negro. When we're not happy.
Well, that was detrimental.
That was detrimental because that was what we call it, blackface. You put it on, minstrel shows. They're always smiling, they're always happy, they're always dancing. Well, no, we're not always. And then on the other side of that, sometimes people want to portray you as angry. Oh, they're black and angry. There are times when we're angry. We got to be okay with our emotions. There's times when we're angry, and there's times when we're happy. And they're not all the time. Either one of them are all the time. And it's okay to have sadness. If we don't deal with sadness, then we'll have this undertone where you see the commercial with mental health, and I love it because people are going through the processes of life, fixing their children's lunch and dinner and everything, and they have this little card, and they're holding it up in front of their face. Now they're talking to their children, they're communicating, they're doing the things they have to do to get through life, but the face is sad. And it's always sad. And the children know it. The child's looking at the mother, and she knows that mama's not really happy. The mama's, maybe smiling on the outside, but that sad face is always there. She's going out with the girls for lunch. She's doing the things, day-to-day activities, but the sad face is there. But when we won't acknowledge it, sometimes our friends won't acknowledge it, that there's something going on. And if we're not getting any mental health support, we're never at a place where we can be honest with ourselves. And I'm sad.
Yeah.
And this commercial, of course, is about people who are on medication, but it's not being as effective as it needs to be. So they're evaluating how well is your mental health medication helping you to move through depression or maybe bipolar or whatever. Because you can be on medication and still have some not so well days. How is it well with your soul is a good question.
Yeah, we have to ask that more. And I feel like I'm reading this book now. It's called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome by Dr. Joy DeGruy. And she talks about how much of the behavior that we see ourselves demonstrating, particularly as Black people, is we can source it in the system of enslavement. So when you said that about the tap dancing, but when our ancestors were enslaved and their children were being stripped for their bosom, they were forced to sing. They were forced to sing while that was happening,
and to continue to work.
Because the slaveholders did not want to be in the presence of the discomfort, and so they wanted they didn't want to be in the presence. So they wanted everybody to act like this was a happy, like overlook your feelings and overlook your emotions. So that's something that we have passed on through tradition, through conditioning, through all of that. And so we have to now say, wait a minute. It is true that it is part of our heritage that we have glossed over our emotions, but the time is now when we can say, oh no, we don't have to continue in this way. And it starts with each person saying, look, I'm not going to let anybody tell me that my emotions don't matter. I'm not going to let anybody tell me to dismiss my feelings. I'm not going to let anybody shame me because I'm sad. You're not going to make me believe that I don't have enough faith to, if you just had more faith. That is not what it's about. It's about, this is what I'm feeling. These are my emotions and they deserve attention, and I'm not going to let anybody keep me from giving them the attention that they deserve. So every person has to decide that. And then if you respond to a person that way, then the next time they're like, well, oh, okay, I know with you, I need to ask how is your soul. Absolutely.
Mhm.
That's what you need to be
Yes,
concerned about
yes.
more than, because we don't
What it
have a
look
problem
like.
asking people what you do. Hey, my name is Denise. What's your name? You say, oh, my name is Dr. Pastor Key. And say, oh, what do you do? We don't have a problem asking that
What
question.
they do.
What do you
How
do?
do you feel?
But how do you feel? We don't ask how do you feel. We ask what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
And what we are doing is constantly moving, constantly in motion, constantly laboring
Mm-hmm.
in our bodies without paying attention to
Without
it.
paying attention to it. And we're processing through it no matter what. Whether you deal with it or not, you're going to process through it. That sadness is going to take a toll on your emotions. It's going to take a toll on your relationships. And so your relationship with your spouse or significant other, your family is going to be impacted. If you're sad, they're going to know it. If you're angry, they're going to know it because they're in your inner circle. And you're not going to keep that black face on all the time. At some point, it's coming off. And when it comes off, they're going to be like, oh, I didn't know you were like that. But it's been there all the time. But some people who are really concerned about you will go behind the mask. They will go behind the veil and really find out what's going on with you. And as leaders and pastors and mentors and people who are a force in the community, we've got to go behind that. Mm-hmm. Because if we don't, we're going to be faced with situations where someone's in the congregation, as we say, acting out. Well, sometimes they take out the mask. It's not nothing new. They just took out the mask today, and you're seeing what's going on with them. You're seeing the struggle that they're going through. And a lot of times it is sometimes related to unresolved grief. Sometimes it's related to unrecognized anger. I've got a right to be angry. This happened to me. My son was shot. You want me to just be over? You want me just to go on? Or my son was murdered, or my son is in prison. I'm suffering loss because my father's in jail. I have never met my father, or I don't have a father relationship with the father, the man who my biological father. I don't know him, so I'm fatherless, so to speak. And we don't want to deal with it. Oh, well, you got a good man taking care of you, and it may be a good man, and then your mother may have given you a good father figure in the home, but there's some grief that goes with knowing this is not my biological father.
Yeah, and I think that the church has
we don't want to acknowledge it.
Yeah, I think that the church has weaponized forgiveness. So we have this conversation, a person comes to you and they express their grief because somebody has injured them, and you say, well, you just need to forgive them. And if you don't forgive them, the Lord won't forgive you. So then now you're shaming me because I have these feelings of unforgiveness because this person traumatized me. This person hurt me. This person killed the person that I love. And you say, oh no, you got to forgive if you want the Lord. And so we have weaponized that. And it also
we have weaponized religion.
Well, yes,
because actually the Bible talks about forgiveness. Yes, it does talk about forgiveness, and I do believe that it's necessary because the forgiveness is not really for that person. It releases you.
I don't think I have to forgive anybody to be released. If we're going to process through grief, if we're talking about the steps of grief, you mentioned them. One of them is anger, one of them is acceptance, one of them. So if we're going to go through the process of grief, I don't have to forgive you to work through that process.
No.
And so that's what I mean by people make us feel like we have to in order for the Lord to approve of us. And that's simply not true. I can still be in right relationship with God, whether or not I choose to forgive. And so I think that is where some people get tripped up. But I do want to ask you about this, though. I watch a lot of crime shows. And there are two things that happen on crime shows that really, really vex my spirit. One of them is that a person, these are crime shows, so somebody has been killed, and they're talking to a survivor, whether it's the partner, the family, the daughter, and the survivor, when they begin to talk about their family member that was lost, they begin to cry. And once they start crying, they say, oh, I'm sorry. And then they start wiping their tears away. And I'm like, why? And I don't think that that's just unique to the people that I'm watching on this show. Why do we feel that we can't? Why do we apologize for our tears? Why do we apologize for being sad? Why do we apologize for emoting in public?
I think that's a type of shame. It's like I'm crying all over you, or I'm dripping all over you, or I'm pouring my emotions all over you. And excuse me, but you have a right to release your emotions. And grief has a way of coming up. Like I say, it's coming up again. Sometimes I remember with losing my mother because of religious background and faith, and wrongly applied faith. I think sometimes we feel like my mother was 86 years old. She lived a full life. She was a woman of God. And she lived to a ripe old age, and it was time for her to go home, and God called her home. That's comforting to some extent, But I had to realize, even though I was 60 years old when she passed, that's still my mama.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a right and need
Mm-hmm.
to grieve her
Mm-hmm.
because she's not going to be there for breakfasts or lunches or visits or calls. And that's a loss in your life.
Mm-hmm.
But when you don't allow yourself, or your religious misunderstanding doesn't allow you to acknowledge that, sometimes it will pop out at inappropriate, or we might say inappropriate time.
Yeah.
And I would find myself talking about my mom within that first year, especially. And all of a sudden, I would just be well up. I would just be tearful because I didn't allow myself to really weep when she passed, because my mother's 86 years old, and Lord let me have her for 60 years. We comfort ourselves with things that are marginally helpful, but not really, not really addressing the issue. You just lost your mother.
Or in a situation,
and you have a right to grieve, and you should grieve. And sometimes we should encourage people to grieve.
Yes,
people. But what happens? People shut you down. Don't cry. Don't cry. It's over. She's in the arms of the Lord, and people will shut you down. And so you're gonna finish that grief sometime or another. And it may be at a time when you just think, where did that come from? It came from unresolved issues, and many times it will, especially because life comes at you fast. And we know in our communities, most of our stressors are related to adversity. Financial issues come up. We have to go bankruptcy. You have to go and say in bankruptcy. That's a major change in financial standing. It affects your credit, affects it for some years, and having to admit that you can't handle these bills and having to go to court, all the processes that you go through for bankruptcy. That's something that causes you to grieve. Because your financial health is being affected by this, and it hangs on for so long. And sometimes we don't deal with how we feel about that.
Yeah,
we kind of tuck it under the rug, and so we always feel a little less valued.
Yeah, because society shames us for our tears.
So
we've been conditioned to believe that. And sometimes it's a situation like me. When my father died, I was the point person. And so because as the point person, there's so many things to get done. You got to make sure you're talking to the funeral home. You got to get the obituary. You got to get the church together. You have to do the repay. You have all of these things to do. And so you really don't have the headspace in that moment to grieve, because there are so many things that have to get done. And as the point person, you are the one that has to make sure that it gets done. Even if you ask for help, you're the one that has to make sure that it gets done. And so it's later that your body finally catches up with you and says, you know what? You need to be safe. You have to, you need to pay attention to what has happened. And so I think that
a lot of times physical issues come up.
Sometimes.
Oh, I got this pain. Why do I have this pain? And really it's a grief, heartache, and you have a cardiology workup. You go have stomach issue, and it's really your grief, because you have this hard knot in your stomach because you've never grieved. You never just cried. Jesus wept, but we don't remember the tears are okay.
Yeah, and we condition especially our young boys. Men don't cry. We say things like that. The other thing that happens on crime shows that vexes my spirit is that there's a person who may have lost their children because of to murder, to rape, to murder, to whatever, and the person will say, nobody asks me about my children. So I would love to talk about my children. I would love to share stories about my children, but nobody asks me any questions. No, and then when I do bring them up, everybody gets uncomfortable, and so now I'm isolated because people don't want to be around me because they don't know how to feel because my children have been murdered. And it's just like, no, talk to me about my children. So this shame that society has conditioned us to attach to tears, it affects our brain health on so many levels, because we are not allowing people to live into the fullness of their life, which includes the death of a child. That's part of their life story. Let them tell it.
That's right.
And why does it make me uncomfortable? Because something happened to you. I'm supposed to be creating space for you, right?
I think we need to enlarge our territory, within our capacity to share that grief and to cry with someone. And it's okay, because it's not so much brokenness as it is freedom. You give me permission to grieve, and I'm giving you permission to grieve with me. Because in our community, especially in our Black community, a loss in the community to your loss is my loss, because you're my sister. So you lost your mom, I've lost a sister. And so we're more connected than we realize.
Mm-hmm.
And how well our community is also based on how well the individuals are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with that 100. I agree with that 100%. And so I think that we have to create space to know how to be in relationship with people. We have to give ourselves over to the conversation so that we know that it is okay to give people permission to cry, and we can hold those tears. And I think that we have to, like, again, the way we behave. I was out with a woman the other day, and like you said, out of nowhere, she started crying. Out of nowhere. The first thought in my mind was, I need to get up and get her some tissue, because since I didn't know she was going to cry, I didn't have any tissue. I don't carry tissue around in my purse. I'm going to from now on, but I don't. And so I thought, but I stopped and I thought, if I get up right now to go get the tissue, this will stop the flow of the conversation, which may very well stop the tears. And clearly these tears need to come because you could tell that they surprised her too. So I did not move. I didn't try to get up. I didn't try to go because I didn't.
You didn't try to make yourself comfortable.
And I also I wasn't worried about the people watching. I wasn't worried that anybody was going to see her crying. I wasn't worried that people were going to wonder what was going on. I did not care. This is a space that has now become so sacred and so holy. I'm going to stay right here. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to let her stay right here. And we've got to be able to do that.
We have to be able to do that. And we've got to create safe places, safe relationships. And there should be safety within our community that we can tell someone, I'm angry and I'm still angry of what happened last year. I'm still angry at what happened 2 years ago. And we need to not release our anger or not cover up our anger and tap dance around it and look like everything is okay when it's not. You know, sometimes we don't want to be tagged as the angry black women or angry black men or whatever. But sometimes as a woman, sometimes we have a lot to be angry about. And we need to deal with it. We not need to be vexed all the time and look like mad face all the time, you know, scrawling and angry about everything. But there are some issues that need to be resolved, and until you address it, it's not going to be resolved. And if you're having problems handling your anger, if your anger makes you want to hurt yourself, then you're not handling it well. And when we turn it in and we don't deal with the issue as it really is, we end up turning it in on ourselves. And there's an increased rate. This is something that we in the Black community hadn't really realized how high our suicide rate is.
Yeah, and not just so suicide, absolutely. And we also turn it to the people that are closest to us. Yes. So the people in our household are being the ones who suffer. From our unresolved mental health issues. Right? And so unaddressed, unnamed, unknown maybe. But I'm a cradle Christian. So I grew up in a family that was Christian. So that automatically, the way my family was, that automatically made me Christian. And so I've been a student of the word for 52 years now. So I'm 52 years now. And one of the things that I have learned in my own spiritual walk is that I don't have to anymore learn all of these verses so that I can quote them. What I now do is I see the Bible as a tool that has principles in it that can help me. Mm-hmm. And so when I think about this conversation right here, I think about the story of Job. And I don't want to talk about all the stuff he had and how rich he was and all of that. What I want to talk about is that when he was experiencing the sores all over his body, when he was experiencing physical turmoil, his mind, he had lost everything. People from all over the country came to him, and all they did was sit with him. Mm-hmm. They didn't try to offer no cliches. They didn't start talking about how the Lord gonna fix it. They didn't talk about no Bible verses. They simply sat with him in silence for like days. I think it was like 7 days. They just sat there with their friend whom they love. Mm-hmm. And so now all of us are experiencing this together. And it's a symbol to let us know that we're going to work through it together. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind
You're
of
not
principle
in this by yourself.
Exactly. Those are the kind of principles that I think that we should pay more attention to. Mm-hmm. So we've talked about that today. We've talked about the importance of giving people space to acknowledge and to name their own grief, their own sadness, their own anger. We've talked about creating space for them to emote. If they want to cry, it ought to be okay. We've talked about how we should not move in ways that make us feel more comfortable and deny the other person the opportunity to experience whatever they have experienced. We've talked about how the church needs to step up in its regard to mental health. And we've talked about how sometimes the church is just not going to be the resource that we need. We need people in the community. We've talked about mental health issues as it relates to medication, and that sometimes you don't need medication. You need to check in with your soul. I'll never forget that I was suffering from insomnia, and I was going to the doctor, and he was giving me sleeping pills. I think he gave me 3 different pills because I kept calling him back, and I was a pastor at the time, a pulpit pastor. I kept calling him back saying, these don't work, these don't work. On the 3rd time, he was a Christian too, on the 3rd time he said, oh, medication is not going to fix this. You got to learn how to clear your mind. You can't sleep because your mind not clear. You can't sleep because your soul ain't at rest. You can't sleep because you're not at peace. I need you to work on that. So that's what the medicine was. Me coming into his office and us working through what is it that's keeping me from getting this rest? What is it that's keeping me? And once we figured that out, I was sleeping like a baby. And so we've talked about all of the different ways that we can go about tending our mental health.
And I'm glad you said that about medication, because medication can be a resource, and pastors or whoever the person might turn to, whoever, and usually in our community it is pastors, it's connected to our faith, need to have the resources to know that there is professionals available that are specialists in that area, and that you're not casting them away, you're not ignoring them, you're not dealing with them. Have your resources in hand, because you will be faced with it, because it's already in your community, in your congregation, and it will come home.
It's probably in your house.
It's probably in your house. And deal with it yourself. You know, it's okay. Sometimes I say it's okay to take that little blue pill. Sometimes we need that little blue pill. Sometimes it will help slow you down so you can process what you're going through. And it's okay. Sometimes we feel like we have failed as people of faith if we take the medication. But Jesus used many, many modes of healing. His healing was not always spoken.
Okay, that was medication that Jesus used. You remember the story about the man who was blind?
Yes.
And he spit on the dirt and turned it into mud and put
on his eyes.
To me, that's nuts.
And that was like a point of contact. And so the medication, we know Tylenol is what all the acetaminophen, what's inside the Tylenol and the ingredients of it. It's got some other issues to it. It's got some side effects to it as well. But even the Tylenol, I'm just taking the Tylenol for my headache. It could not work. Because it could not be the reason why the source for the reason Tylenol might not be effective on it. So when we take medication, we need to take it in faith. Pray and ask God, Lord, for the healing that only comes from Him. But the medication can come from the doctor. The healing comes from God.
I don't know how I feel about
the medication could come from the doctor.
I feel like I got a lot to say about that, but we're running out of time. I want to make sure that I give you the last word. We've got just about 30 seconds or so. What would you like to leave us with?
That we need resources. We need to have resources, and resources are available in every state for mental health. There are we have access to it, but we need to be referred to it. We need to be pointed in that direction. And I think that the role for whoever is being confronted with that need, whether it's a pastor or whether it's a parent or whether it's a friend, get those resources to that person that's in trouble, because it's not dealing with it or not answering it for them, but let them know what's available to them and encourage them to go there and to take away the stigma of getting help.
You've been listening to the Health Corner every third Thursday right here at KABF 88.3 FM with I was about to say your girl, don't let me say that, with Pastor Key right here holding it down for the mental health, for the Health Corner. And we will see you again on next month. Please be reminded, as Mary J. Blige said, you don't have to be bitter. You don't have to be alone. You don't have to be isolated. There is help for you in the form of therapy. We just talked to you about all the different ways therapy can manifest in your life. There are resources available to you based on who you are and what you need and what you believe is out there. And we want you to get it. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be right back here on next week. Monday is Down with Debt. And Tuesday is Community Voices. Thursday is The Workplace. We'll see you soon. Okay.